Hello! Welcome to the podcast, There Is No Spoon. In previous episodes, we discussed what the midway pass is, a stage of life more commonly known as the midlife crisis. We found out what kind of baggage a person usually carries with them when they reach this point. At the midpoint of the journey, one of the most important skills is knowing when to pause, take a deep breath, and ask yourself the right questions. There's a saying that a well-phrased question already points toward the answer. Who am I? And what do I want? The famous questions from the TV series Babylon 5 are good, but too abstract. Something more specific is needed. In this episode, I'd like to explore the questions posed by James Hollis in his book, Finding Meaning in the Second Half of Life, which focuses on the midlife crisis. The first question is essentially aimed at identifying the dynamics of repeating life patterns. Where has life, in its unfairness, stuck you, fixated you, caused you to circle back and back upon this wounding as a provisional definition and limitation of your possibilities? Why do you continue to cooperate with the wound, rather than serve something larger, which serves you in return? All the ways we have learned to live need to be examined to determine how well they align with our current life. Everyone adapts to adulthood differently. Many of the decisions we make happen when we are still children or teenagers. The coping strategies we developed may have worked well back then, but that doesn't mean they are still optimal for us now. The situation has changed, circumstances have changed, people have changed, we have changed. This leads to a simple conclusion. We need to reassess the baggage we carry. Some things can be kept, some let go, some transformed, and some even reclaimed. To conduct such a review, try recalling the most important events that have happened to you recently. Take a sheet of paper and a pen, draw a horizontal line symbolizing your life, and mark the present moment. Then plot all the events you remember along the timeline. For each event, write down the changes associated with it. What changed in your life? What changed in you? What new qualities or behavioral patterns emerged? Did any disappear? What about your desires? Have you started wanting something new? Or given up on something? How important is this to you now? Don't dive into each event in too much detail. Just gather the key information about what has happened. If you need a structure, divide it into thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and behaviors. Then try to assess changes in each area. Once you've done this, bring everything together and consider what you would like to change. What would you like to reclaim, and what would you prefer to leave behind? Think about what steps you can take right now and in the near future. And ask yourself, why not? Hollis suggests focusing on trauma in this question. I, however, propose looking at it more broadly, focusing on everything that, for some reason, has been overlooked or left unattended. That is the first question. Now let's move on to the second one. Where has life blessed you, given you a gift? And what have you done with that gift? How have you accepted the responsibility that goes with it? This question invites us to reflect on whether our current situation is truly allowing us to realize our talents. What are our gifts? What qualities make us unique? What do we excel at? What do we struggle with? How well does our current life allow us to express these gifts? Are we engaged in what we are naturally inclined toward? Or have we abandoned it in favor of our parents' expectations, societal pressures, or fear? Why aren't we doing what we are predisposed to do? Have we conformed to the zeitgeist, as Jung put it, the spirit of the times, by following society's expectations? Or have we followed the deeper spirit within us? In the self-determination theory of Deci and Ryan, which relates to motivation psychology, there is a key idea. We live more fulfilling lives when we do what we are naturally inclined to and what we are good at. This allows us to feel competent, which contributes to overall well-being. Thus, this question encourages us to reflect on what we have been given and what we have made of it. The third question, where do you remain blocked by fear, inertia, habit, or resistance to change? In essence, this is a reformulation of the first question. A related question asks, in what areas are you still waiting for permission to live your life? And yet, this is a useful reflection. A more specific question to ask yourself here is, what do you want to do right now but aren't doing? Forget about external and internal constraints for a moment. Just think about your desires. Maybe you want to start painting, or playing music, learning the piano or guitar, singing, crocheting, studying astrophysics. Set aside some time to reflect on this. Hollis formulates the fourth question as follows. What other fears are hidden beneath your familiar fears? A fear that drains your strength in the present moment can hold power over you only if it is fueled by a much deeper, historical energy field, which, in turn, leads back even further, to a fear rooted in the past. This chain activates an ancient signal that makes the present fear seem bigger than you, causing you to ignore the adult you have become. An adult endowed with full awareness and strength. The next question, the fifth, is related to your parents. At what stage of growth did your father stop, and how is that stagnation reflected in your life? Where did your mother's growth halt, and how is that visible to you? Are you repeating their lives, their patterns, perhaps compensating excessively, or attempting to resolve it in a way that causes even greater harm and self-alienation? Will this legacy, in turn, be passed on to your children? People, especially those closest to us, shape who we are. Yes, as adults, we may reach a point where we can choose our social circle, but we don't choose our parents. And while we were children, we unconsciously absorbed their values, aspirations, and limitations. Two extreme positions may emerge. I want to be just like my parents, or the opposite, I want to be nothing like my parents. Neither of these is truly individual. They are both shaped by unresolved parent-child relationships. This is something to work on. A good starting point is to list what your parents achieved, what they projected onto you, or what they wanted from you. What decisions in your life, education, career, relationships, were influenced by them. What habits, patterns, and thoughts stem from your childhood. Once you have this list, go through each point and assess how much it aligns with your current desires, how much of it is truly yours, and how much belongs to someone else. Of course, this is best done with a therapist, but even self-reflection will be extremely valuable. From here, you can begin separating the wheat from the chaff. Another question posed by Hollis is, where do you avoid conflict, the necessary conflict of values, and therefore avoid living in fidelity with who you are? This question can be framed as a task. Take inventory of your current deep conflicts. What do you desire that your values, habits, or morals forbid you from pursuing? This is, in a way, shadow work. There are many things we see as unacceptable or incompatible with our self-image, yet we still desire them. Maybe you've been wanting to go to a spa for a long time, but spending money on yourself feels wrong. Or you want some time alone, but you feel obligated to spend it with your family. Or perhaps you'd love to spend the weekend just playing video games or binge-watching TV shows. Or maybe you have feelings for someone, but circumstances, sometimes quite real and objective, prevent you from being together. Here, you need to be brutally honest with yourself and identify such situations. Then ask yourself, which of them are truly not an option for you? If the only thing stopping you is your personal values, are they really worth it? Yes, I understand. There are a lot of buts and fears. What will happen to me if I step away from this? How will my loved ones react? Will I still be myself? My answer is, you won't know unless you try. Caution is a valuable skill, but you can't live your whole life without taking risks. This reminds me of Kierkegaard, The Sickness unto Death. And yet, by not venturing, it is so dreadfully easy to lose that which it would be difficult to lose in even the most venturesome venture, and in any case, never so easily, so completely, as if it were nothing, oneself. For if I have ventured amiss, very well, then life helps me by its punishment. But if I have not ventured at all, who then helps me? Now, the seventh question is, what ideas, habits, behavioral patterns are holding you back from the large journey of the soul? What secondary gains do you receive by staying mired in the old security, predictability, validation from others? Is it possible that you're tired of settling for the status quo and are finally ready to take the first step toward real change? James Hollis frames the key question well. What hidden benefit do you get from staying in your routine? To break free from stagnation, you first need to understand what's keeping you there. That's the real task here. Qui prodest? Who benefits from this? What purpose does it serve? Once you identify the underlying motive, you gain the power to move past it. Hollis also poses another crucial question. In what areas of your life do you still need to grow? And when will you take action? This is a critical point. We often develop well in some areas of life while remaining stuck at a much earlier stage in others. Take a moment to assess your progress in different aspects of life: career, finances, relationships, family, health, social standing, education, sense of identity, and so on. Where are you thriving, and where do you still have unfinished business? Many people feel deeply uncomfortable growing in areas where they lack competence. For example, I might excel in my professional growth, building a strong career, and accumulating valuable experience. But if I never develop my ability to build relationships, I will struggle in that area simply due to lack of experience. Or the opposite. I might invest a lot of time in relationships, romance, and friendships in my youth, but reach a point where I have little to show from my career. In this case, I may keep postponing professional growth, afraid to ask for promotions, hesitant to take on new responsibilities, or worried about judgment from colleagues and peers. Often, when we feel less competent in a certain area, we unconsciously rely on others to fill the gap. This is especially common in romantic relationships, where partners complement each other. On one hand, this can be a beautiful dynamic, but it also carries a risk. If my partner meets a need for me, I may never feel the urgency to develop that part of myself. As a result, I stay stuck at a certain level, never really growing in that area. So be honest with yourself. Where do you keep postponing your own growth? In what area of life do you feel younger than you actually are? Once you recognize this, you can begin breaking through the barriers that hold you back. For those familiar with Jung's work, you can think of this in terms of the inferior function, but in a broader sense. And finally, the last but equally important question from Hollis. What have you always felt called toward, but feared to do? Is it possible to embrace it now, not necessarily in a literal way, but at least symbolically? What unknown force within you is striving to emerge into your life? This is a powerful question to end on. Life is complex and multifaceted. Of course, there are many things we do simply because they need to be done: work, social obligations, health, finances. But where is the soul in this equation? Where is that deeper symbolic dimension that Carl Jung, Marie-Louise von Franz, Joseph Campbell, and James Hollis spoke about? Why does this matter? There are many different ways to approach this. Jung, for instance, offers a compelling, though somewhat abstract, explanation through the concept of individuation. The tasks of individuation are unavoidable. You either take them on willingly, or life forces you to confront them. But let's put it in more practical terms. Here's how I see it. Working on a symbolic level grants you access to a vast reservoir of inner resources that were previously blocked. We could use the elegant metaphors of the shadow, the anima, and so on. But we can also take a more straightforward approach. When do we perform at our best? When we have strong inner motivation. And where does motivation come from? One of its primary sources is meaning. When something holds deep meaning for us, it fuels motivation, which in turn gives us the energy to act. That's why the symbolic level is the key that unlocks our personal potential. But meaning isn't something you can create through rationalization or abstract thinking alone. Meaning is forged through symbolism, through the actions of the soul, not just the ego consciousness. So ask yourself, how does the symbolic dimension manifest itself in your life? And what can you do to cultivate it, to ensure that it's strong enough to support you in becoming the person you truly want to be? Now it's time to wrap up with a few final thoughts. The set of questions we've discussed is not exhaustive. I'm sure there are many others. But this is a solid starting point, not just for reflecting on where you are in life, but for creating a concrete plan to move forward. This isn't a 5-minute exercise. You will likely revisit these questions many times, moving through them in a cyclical, hermeneutic process. But if you find yourself at a crossroads in life, these are the questions you cannot avoid. They must be answered if you are to continue your journey. This was the podcast, There Is No Spoon. Until next time.